Assalamu alaikum. Today we will start our first online lecture, Muscular System 3. Okay, we will start to discuss the body movement. First movement is flexion. Flexion means to turn your foot in this way. Turn your leg in this way, move your arm by this way. Extension, this is the way of the extension. Hyperextension. This hyperextension movement is related only to the shoulder joint, and as we mentioned before, while we are discussing the joint, the shoulder joint can do hyperextension, extension, flexion, and circumduction. As we mentioned, it is highly movable joint. Also, the hyperextension can be done in the neck, and this is the position of extension, and here is the position of flexion. Also in the neck we can do rotation, right? There is a very important movement which is abduction. Abduction means make the limb closer to the midline. So abduction means making the limb closer to the midline, while abduction means making the limb away from the midline. These two movements, the adduction and the abduction, can be applied over the arm and thigh and leg. So if you bring the thigh to the middle line, this means adduction. If you make it the thigh away from the middle line, this means abduction. While circumduction means the complete rotation of the limb around its joint. As we mentioned before, this can happen in the shoulder joint. So the body movement, we can summarize it in either flexion, extension, or adduction, circumduction, and hyperextension. Also, there is what we call the lateral rotation away from the middle line, while medial rotation is closer to the middle line. There is a special movement. This special movement are applied only in the hands and the foot, right? There is two movements, we call them pronation and supination, right? In the foot, we have dorsiflexion and plantar flexion, and also inversion and eversion. In the thumb, there is a special movement which we call it opposition. If the thumb meets the little finger, this condition we call it opposition. Okay, so what are the special movements we have? In the hand, we have pronation, means the hand, the palm of the hand is down, while supination, the palm is facing upwards. We have plantar flexion, while the big toe touch the floor, right, as what's going on during the ballet dancer, and dorsiflexion, if you raise the sole of, if you raise the foot, raise your leg. We have inversion and eversion. Then the opposition, which is meeting the thumb to the little finger. Okay, so these are the movements. Now we have to discuss the most superficial muscles of the head and neck. These muscles are responsible for all the facial expression. Let us start with what we call the occipitofrontalis. This occipitofrontalis muscle, let us review. It is named after its anatomical position, right? Frontal belly and occipital belly. They are connected together by this fibration, which we call it cranial aponeurosis. The first muscle we have, we call it occipitofrontalis. The first muscle we have, we call it what? Occipitofrontalis. Right? Here is the occipitofrontalis. What is the action of the occipitofrontalis? Wrinkling of the forehead as while we are angry, and wrinkling of the occipital muscle, which is more prominent in males than females. Then this muscle, which we call the temporalis muscle. The temporalis muscle is named after its anatomical position over the temporal bone. Orbicularis oculi muscle. Orbicularis oculi muscle. We called it orbicularis because it is the rounded muscle which surrounded the eye. Then its main function is closure of the eye. Then we have orbicularis oris, also means the rounded muscle around the mouth. It is responsible for closure of the mouth. Then we have this muscle, little bit deep, we call it buccinator muscle. This buccinator muscle is responsible for blowing or whistling. Then we have the zygomaticus major muscle. The zygomaticus major muscle. This zygomaticus major muscle is responsible for smiling on one side, right? Smiling on one side. Zygomaticus major. So let us repeat. We have first one, occipitofrontalis, which is responsible for wrinkling of the forehead. Orbicularis oculi, the rounded muscle around the eye, which is responsible for closure eye. Then orbicularis oris, the rounded muscle around the mouth, which is responsible for closure of the mouth. Then buccinator, which is responsible for blowing action. Then zygomaticus major, which is responsible for smiling on one side. These muscles, we call it the muscle of the facial expression, right? They are the most superficial muscle. All these muscles are supplied by the facial nerve, which is the seventh cranial nerve. Are supplied by what? By the facial nerve, which is the seventh cranial nerve. Okay? There is a disease affecting the facial nerve. We call it facial nerve palsy or Bell's palsy. Okay? Facial nerve palsy or Bell's palsy. What will happen? What is the complaint of the patient? The patient will come complaining that he cannot wrinkle his forehead. He cannot express his anger. He cannot close his eye while he is sleeping. He cannot close his mouth The food is dribbling from the side of the mouth. He cannot smile properly. Okay, so this condition we call it Bell's palsy or facial nerve palsy. What is the treatment of this Bell's palsy? Uh, Physiotherapy to make electrical excitation of the muscle. As we mentioned before, one of the main criteria of the muscles is that it is able to be excited by electric currents. Second, we give the patient anti-inflammatory and minimal dose of corticosteroid. Always in young adults, this disease is completely cured within 2 to 3 weeks. But in old age person, diabetic person, this disease always have a remnant. Like the patient cannot close his eye properly, still the angle of the mouth is not returned to its normal position and so on. Right? So these muscles are supplied by the facial nerve, which is the seventh cranial nerve. Also in the superficial muscle of the head and neck, we have two muscles. This one temporalis and that one masseter. We call these two muscles mastication muscles. They are supplied by the trigeminal nerve or the fifth cranial nerve. Okay. These are the only superficial muscle of the head that we will study. Then we have a very important muscle in the neck, this one which we call the sternocleidomastoid muscle. Sternocleidomastoid muscle. As you know, this muscle is named after its origin and insertion. Sterno connected to the origin, cleido connected or originated from the clavicle, mastoid it ends in the mastoid process, right? What is the action of this sternocleidomastoid? Turning the neck to one side. Also, we have one muscle, this muscle which we call the platysma. It looks like a curtain, right? You know, it stretch the neck, This sternomastoid and the platysma muscle are the most superficial muscle you need to know in neck. Okay, let us discuss the muscles of the anterior of the trunk, okay, and chest, anterior of the trunk and the upper part of the arm. The most superficial muscle of the chest, which we call the pectoralis major. Pectoralis major, this muscle is named after its anatomical position in the pectoral region. Deep to the pectoralis major, we have the pectoralis minor, of course. Then this serratus anterior, which named it has a sawtooth appearance. It looks like the sawtooth, right? It is named after its shape, and we call this muscle also the swimmer muscle. Sorry, this muscle, serratus anterior, we call it the boxer muscle. It is very well developed in the boxing people, right? Then here is the deltoid muscle. This is the triangular muscle. It has a very wide origin, as you see, from the clavicle, from the acromion process, from the spine of the scapula, then inserted in the deltoid tuberosity. Right? Let us discuss the muscle of the anterior abdominal wall. The first one, this one, which we called it rectus abdominis, right? Rectus abdominis. This is the muscle of the six packs, right? Deep to it, we called it external oblique, then internal oblique and transversus abdominis. You see that the muscles of the abdominal wall are named according to its anatomical position. External oblique is the most superficial muscle. The fibers are directed downwards and medially, while internal oblique is the middle layer. The fibers are directed downward and laterally, while the transversus abdominis, the fibers are directed transversely. Okay, what is the action of these abdominal muscles? The action of the abdominal muscles is to increase the intra-abdominal pressure. These muscles contract during the process of defecation, urination, and childbirth. These are these are what we call the abdominal muscles. The external oblique, internal oblique, transversus abdominis, and the rectus abdominis, the most superficial one, which we call the six backs muscle. Okay, then the muscle of the back of the trunk, we will study only two. This one, trapezius, as you see, it has a very wide origin and narrow insertion. Then, after the trapezius, we have the latissimus dorsi, this one. We call this latissimus dorsi the swimmer's muscle. It is very well developed in the people who are playing this game. Deeper to the disease, over the surface of the scapula, we have supraspinatus and infraspinatus muscles. Over the vertebral border of the scapula, let us arrange this muscle. First, we call this one elevator scapulae. Second is rhomboides minor and rhomboides major. Rhomboides minor and rhomboides major, as you see, they are named after their shape, and size. Minor means small, while major means large. Okay, so that's the only group of muscle that you will study in the trunk, either anterior and posterior. Okay, before we start the muscle of the arm, right, please write this rule. All the muscles of the anterior compartment of the upper limb are flexors, while muscles of the posterior compartment are extensors. Okay, the extensor muscle, while the back, we call it triceps brachii. As you see, it is named, it has three heads: long head, lateral head, and middle head. This is the triceps brachii, very large muscle, has three heads. Each one has its origin, but all of them are inserted in the all-training process. So all the extensor muscle of the arm and the forearm, all the back muscle of the arm and the forearm are extensors, right? And understand this clearly. All the back muscle of the upper limb are extensors, while the muscle of the anterior compartment of the upper limb are flexors. The anterior compartment of the upper limb are flexors. We have three muscles of the anterior compartment of the upper limb. We call them biceps. The first one is the biceps brachii. The first one is the biceps brachii, the second one is the brachialis, and the third one is the brachioradialis. Biceps brachii means the muscle of the two heads. Okay? Biceps brachii is the muscle of the two heads, and it is inserted in the radial tuberosity. brachialis muscle, which is the horse work of the action of flexion of the elbow and inserted in the pronoid process. Then brachioradialis, as you see, it is named after its anatomical position. First, originated from the lower of the humerus and insert in the radius. So it is named after the anatomical position. So how many muscles of the anterior compartment of the arm? 3. The first is biceps brachial, the second is the brachialis, the third is brachioradialis. They are flexors of the elbow. Note that the muscle to act on a joint should be inserted after the joint, right? Right. The biceps brachial has an origin above the shoulder joint, so also it could be a flexor for the shoulder joint. So the anterior compartment of the upper limb are flexors while the posterior are extensors. Let us come to the muscles of the forearm. Here is the anterior compartment. We will have the brachioradialis as a landmark. Then here is the pronator teres, flexor carpi radialis, palmaris longus, بعدين flexor carpi ulnaris. Okay, then the most superficial is flexor digitorum superficialis. Note that they named after their action. Flexor carpi radialis means the muscle, its action is flexion of the wrist joint, right, and inserted at the end of the radius. Flexor carpi ulnaris means it is towards the ulnar side and it flexes the carpals. Flexor digitorum superficialis means it is inserted in the digits and it's the digits. Right? Come to the back of the muscle of the forearm. Also, we will have our same landmark, which is the brachioradialis. Then the second one will be extensor carpi radialis longus. Then extensor carpi radialis brevis. Then extensor digitorum, and the last one will be extensor carpi ulnaris. Okay, so the muscles they named after their action. They are extensors for the wrist bone or carpals. They named after their location either radialis or ulnaris, right? Extensor digitorum, of course, it will extend the digits. Okay, let us come to the muscle of the lower limb. Before we study the muscle of the lower limb, please write this rule. All the muscles of the anterior compartment of the lower limb are extensors, while the muscle of the posterior compartment of the lower limb are flexors. Okay? You wrote this rule? Fine. Let us make a medical information about the most common site for intramuscular injection. In the upper limb, the most common site for intramuscular injection is the deltoid muscle, right? For the adults. In adults, we can give intramuscular injection in the deltoid muscle. And also for adults, we can give injection in the gluteal region. We divide it into 4 quadrants and give the injection in the upper outer quadrant, which is the gluteus medius. The gluteus medius in the upper outer quadrant, gluteus medius, right? Also, a very common site of intramuscular injection, but in children, we call it vastus lateralis. Okay? So, again, deltoid, gluteus medius, and vastus lateralis. Gluteus medius and deltoid common sites in children. Sorry. Gluteus medius and deltoid are the common sites in adults, while vastus lateralis is a common site in children. Okay, let us discuss the muscle of the posterior compartment of the thigh. What is their main action? Flexion of the knee joint, right? Okay. First, what is this bone? We call it iliac crest. And here is the back of the ilium, which we call it the gluteal region. The gluteal region. Over the gluteal region, we have the gluteus maximus, which is the largest, heaviest muscle inside our body. Deeper to it is the gluteus medius, right, which is the common site for intramuscular injection. Deeper to the gluteus medius is the gluteus minimus. All the gluteus are inserted in the gluteal tuberous. The gluteal muscle are responsible for standstill position. Okay. Then we have the hamstring group. The hamstring group is formed of three muscles. The biceps femoris, it is named after its anatomical position. It has two heads. Then the semitendinosus, which ends with the tendon, and semimembranosus, which starts with a membrane. The three muscles are levels of the knee joint. Okay. The muscle of the medial compartment of the thigh, we call it adductor group. It's formed of gracilis, okay, then adductor longus, adductor magnus, and adductor brevis. We call it the adductor group. This means that their main action is to pull the thigh together. So, the adductor group is formed of gracilis, adductor longus, adductor magnus, adductor brevis. Okay, this is the adductor group. The lateral group, which we call the iliotibial tract, which is responsible for shaping of the lateral side of the thigh. Let us discuss the anterior compartment. The anterior compartment, we will start from up. Here, this large muscle, we call it psoas major. Then the muscle over the anterior surface of the iliac fossa, we call it iliacus. So psoas major and iliacus form the iliozoas tract. By the way, the action of the psoas major is the same like sternomastoid. If it contracts to one side, you can bend it to this side. If contracted on the other side, you will bend it to the other side. Let us discuss the anterior compartment. What is the action of the anterior compartment? Extension of the knee. The anterior compartment, or the quadriceps femoris, it is formed of vastus lateralis, rectus femoris, vastus medialis, okay, and vastus intermedius. As we mentioned, vastus lateralis is the commonest site for intramuscular injection in children, right? Also, we have a very long muscle, This muscle we call it sartorius. It starts, as you see, from the anterior superior iliac spine, and in this here in the medial condyle of the tibia. This sartorius, or we call it talar muscle, it is responsible for the crossing of the legs or the special position of the old tailor. The muscles of the anterior of the leg also. These muscles of the anterior compartment of the leg are extensors for the foot. Just we will learn the tibialis anterior and extensor digital. That's it. The muscles of the lateral compartment of the leg, we call it fibularis longus and fibularis brevis. Let us come to the calf muscle, which is formed calf muscle or posterior compartment of the leg. We will study two muscles on the gastrocnemius and soleus. Both of the gastrocnemius and soleus are connected here in this ligament, which we call the tendoachilles. Tendoachilles. يبقى gastrocnemius and soleus inserted here in the tendoachilles, right? These are the posterior compartment of the leg, right? Here, this is the shape of what we call the body builders. The body builders. You see the pectoralis major, the six back abdomen, the serratus anterior, the rectus femoris, the four recti, right? And here is the deltoid, of course. Then, what is the homeostatic relation between the muscular system and the other body system, right? First, we start with the endocrine system. Growth hormone is responsible for the development of all the muscle. The lymphatic system for drainage of the wastes of the muscle. Digestive system to supply the muscles with all the food requirement, and with all the vitamins required for the growth of the muscle or the normal working of the muscle. Then the urinary system responsible for excretion of all the waste as a result of the muscular contraction. The nervous system, of course, it will control the different movement of the muscle. Respiratory system supply the muscle with the needed oxygen to its action. The cardiovascular system, the oxygenated blood supply the muscle with the oxygen and all the nutrients. Deoxygenated blood remove the carbon dioxide and the wastes. The reproductive system, the masculine hormone increase the size of the muscle, while feminine hormone, estrogen and masculine hormone increase the size of the muscle. Integumentary system cover the muscle and protected it. Skeletal muscles, contraction of the muscles lead to move of the different joints.